All right, all right. Welcome to this Thanksgiving week version of A Peek Inside the SEC. Will, it is rivalry week. There's some cross-conference rivals. There's some rivalries within conference. I, you know, we have a wild coaching search that we can talk about. There is just never a dull moment in the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, I mean, this week is by far my favorite week of the entire year because you get great games Thursday, Friday, and Saturday all across the country, especially in the SEC. And there's definitely that added layer of chaos this year because of the Lane Kiffin coaching saga.
Which is definitely where I want to start first. This you and I have been on this roller coaster for a while at this point. Like we're looking at least a month that we've been on this, and we've kind of been on the roller coaster like low key prior to our coach being fired anyway, because we knew there was a great possibility of this happening. Um, it's gotten even more interesting this week. So since we last spoke, Ole Miss had a meeting with Lane Kiffin and Keith Carter and the chancellor of Ole Miss. And, they kind of had a heart to heart. Supposedly, Carter and Kiffin meet every Friday. So I don't know that that part was so out of character, but the fact that the chancellor was there as well added, another layer to this. But we heard all of the rumors about an ultimatum being given that he had to have an answer. Lane kind of pushed back on that in the media, said it wasn't an ultimatum. But I mean, if you say you need to know by the Egg Bowl, it's kind of an ultimatum, right?
Yeah, I think so. And if they don't want to use the word ultimatum, they just use the word deadline because there's clearly that cutoff for Ole Miss, which I think is fair on their part, like where they need to know
Yeah.
what Kiffin's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that that's a fair ask. I also think it's a risky ask, though, because do you want the answer to the question that you are asking? And then once you have the answer, what do you do with that information? If they let Kiffin ride with, I'm going to decide after the season ends, this is not something I'm going to have a conversation with you about now, and they let that ride, there's a chance he coaches them through the playoffs. There's also a chance that he has this change of heart while in the playoffs because it's just such an emotional pull and they're doing something that's never been done before. And maybe they win a lot and maybe he changes his mind. So even though I totally understand Ole Miss saying, hey, we have to know, that's a gamble too, though, right?
It definitely is. Because, and even it's been coming out like, does the committee look at a coachless Ole Miss potentially and punish them in the playoff rankings? Like there is a lot going on that is riding on this decision for Lane, and really it's no one's fault except for the calendars, right? Because you have to do this right now for
Yeah.
the next few years. It's just a really bad time for it, and there's a lot of consequences that come with the calendar the way it is, and the fact that this decision has to get made right now.
That's kind of like the Jordan Travis rule that you alluded to right now, which is, when Florida State had Jordan Travis and they were winning and they were at the top of the bracket for the playoffs. And then they lose him to injury. They don't lose. They keep winning. But there is, that eye test aspect where you say, okay, this is not the same team as it was with him. And they kept him out of the playoffs. So I think that was an interesting article. That article is written by Chris Lowe. And that you've, I'm sure, heard the same smoke I have, which is that Chris Lowe and Kiffin are good friends. And did Kiffin actually float that idea to kind of pressure Ole Miss to allow him to coach the playoffs? Like, do you think there's any truth to that? And if so, how wild is that?
I think there's a degree of truth to it, right? Because I mean, rumors don't just start in nowhere most of the time, so I'm sure there is some truth to it. But just in terms of the situation, it is a different situation to me than the FSU one, just because the FSU spot, that playoff field was a third the size. So if Ole Miss gets left, if they win the Egg Bowl, Lane leaves, and they get left out of the playoff,
Oh,
that
that's
would blow
wild.
my mind.
Yeah.
If you want to drop them to like eighth in the seeding rate, I guess that's fine. Still give them a home game, but it is possible that Kiffin and Lowe are kind of like talking like, dude, you should flip this article real quick to see what happens. Because that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me either. So another interesting rumor that I kind of heard was that part of Ole Miss wanting to push this deadline was less about keeping Kiffin. It was more about retain getting the next coach. And, there's all these rumors that Auburn is hot on Summerall at Tulane. And Auburn has made it pretty clear in an ideal scenario, they get to announce as soon as the Iron Bowl is over who their new head coach is, which is Saturday. Well, the Egg Bowl takes place on Friday. And there is some thought process that Ole Miss wants Summerall as well. So they needed to know so that they could ink something prior to the Iron Bowl. Do you think there's any truth to that rumor?
Oh, I think there definitely is. I mean, because Summerall already has experience at Ole Miss. Like, he's definitely their guy, in theory, if Lane goes. So then that does also put them behind the 8 ball. If they don't know until this decision happens, then you have 24 hours to make a pitch to Summerall before Auburn gets him. Like, the Kiffin domino, like, everyone is just waiting to see what Kiffin does. And then that was really going to set off a domino effect of a lot of these hires and jobs. So I think there's definitely a truth to that, because Summerall, in my opinion, does seem to be that second guy at Ole Miss if it is Kiffin, if Kiffin does decide to leave.
So Auburn's just catching strays over here. They're just running their own race, trying to land their coach, staying quiet, not getting involved, and they may end up on the outs. That would be definitely an interesting scenario. And then you got Florida and LSU. And I think, the second half of this week, it was widely pitched by the, national media, really, that it's LSU and Ole Miss, and Florida's kind of out of it. There was even those rumors that Florida was being ghosted by Lane Kiffin and company. And we know that that's not true, because as soon as that rumor got floated, then Florida actually met with Kiffin and his people. But where do you think the roots of that rumor are from?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, Florida never faded out of this. That was ridiculous. I mean, they were the first team that was in. This goes back to last year, the mutual interest between Florida and Kiffin. So, I mean, you saw it on Ole Miss message boards. That was kind of being pushed with no evidence, and people ran with it because it's what they wanted to have happen.
Yeah.
But now we're at a point where I do think it's down to LSU and Florida. I hate to do what I said was ridiculous, kind of count the school out, but it just feels like with the announcements that we're going to make an announcement, if you're Ole Miss and Kiffin, that doesn't feel like I'm staying. It feels like I'm looking at these other two offers. I'm going to take one of those two jobs.
So, I think Kiffin has a flair for the dramatic. And so, on paper, the idea of like, oh, I'm going to win the Egg Bowl and then I'm just going to announce that I'm coming back and I'm never going anywhere again sounds great in theory. But here's the part that I struggle with. That statement goes out that says that he will focus on the Egg Bowl and then he will make a decision and they will announce it after the Egg Bowl, presumably Saturday. Unless you tell your players that, hey guys, I am staying. I'm just not making it public until Saturday. I don't know how you don't risk losing the locker room. But if you tell 120 guys who then immediately are going to tell their parents or their best friend or their cousin or whatever else, I also don't know how you keep it quiet for a week. So then what was the point in saying you weren't going to announce it until after the Egg Bowl? So that's why I think there's no way he's coming back, because it's just too big of a gamble either way to risk the information getting out ahead of time or losing the locker room, unnecessarily. If you lose the locker room this whole week because you don't allow these players in on your little secret that you're coming back, how pissed are they going to be when they do announce? Maybe they have, I don't know. There's just too many uncertainties for me for him to say he's coming back. It seems like too big of a gamble. What if you announce you coming back, but you lost this game because you lost the locker room because they thought you were leaving? And then you missed the playoffs because you wanted this dramatic moment.
Yeah, there are definitely ways it can go wrong. But I do think that those are kind of all out the window, because I do believe he's just heading out. That would be hysterical if they lose the Egg Bowl and he comes out and says, I'm staying, guys. Hey, let's do it.
How bad would Ole Miss boosters be? Like that, that's actually probably worst case scenario for them if that happens. Because they also feel like 2022 was a letdown because he flirted with the Auburn job. Like Ole Miss fans don't feel like this is the first time he's done this. They also don't feel like it's the last time he will do this, which is an interesting thing to kind of watch unfold. Okay, so let's say this announcement happens after the game. How do you view it going down?
I mean, 30,000 feet, or we talked about this before on the show, actually. I do believe that LSU is a better job than Florida objectively, but
Mhm.
that's not what matters in this situation. What matters is what does Lane Kiffin think the better job is? And in my opinion, that's Florida because of the family ties. You know, he idolizes Spurrier, and money's not going to be a factor in this decision. He said that a few months ago, but now you're seeing the contract details
Oh,
allegedly, right, come out. Like the money's not going to be that much different between all the schools. So
yeah.
when he makes his decision, it's really not going to be because this school is giving me another $1 million a year. It's going to be where do I want to be? Where does my family want to be? I truly do believe that that's going to be Florida for Lane. So I think on Saturday, if you'll be tailgating in Gainesville, then you look at your phone, you see you got a brand new coach, and then you get to go watch a 3-win team play football. It's kind of the ups and downs of the sport there, but I do think that Florida gets some good news on Saturday.
So I think it's interesting that you say that LSU is objectively a better job. I want to push back on that a little bit because, first of all, Brian Kelly may not even really be fired from Ole Miss. I'm pretty sure from LSU. I'm pretty sure that's what they're arguing right now is that nobody actually fired him. He is suing the university to get the money that was guaranteed in the contract that they wrote and they signed. And the governor meddled in that entire coaching firing. And we're talking about a guy who's had 10-win seasons at LSU. And now I thought the Brian Kelly hire was wrong from the jump, right? I don't think that he fits down there at all. I think it's a weird pairing. I would never have signed off on that if I was LSU from the beginning. I think that Brian Kelly's a guy that needs to be coaching in the Northeast, and that's about his demographic. So I'm not saying that they were wrong to fire him, but on paper, you fire a coach who's won a lot of games, a lot of places. You are coming into probably an even bigger pressure cooker than Florida. Florida gave an insane amount of rope to Billy Napier. He unfortunately was too dumb to make any of the changes necessary to like continue this experiment. All he had to do was hire an offensive coordinator. This season still could have gone 3-7 at this point, or 3-8, whatever the heck we're sitting at right now, and he would still be getting a year 5. So, and then the other thing is, our boosters don't get to meddle like they do elsewhere. I think that they're probably more involved in this hire because they are less confident in Strickland's ability to do this job correctly because of the last two. But in general, Florida's boosters have always operated in here's my money and I'll be quiet. And that's the way the university has demanded it. That is not the case at LSU. I cannot recall a single situation outside of mandating the Florida State game where the state government has involved themselves in the way that they have in Louisiana. And I just don't know how objectively, as a coach, you look at what's going on there and you say, that is the place for me right now.
Yeah, you're right. I should have worded that differently. Right now, that place is a disaster. I've even talked like the administration and all that involvement is a nightmare. Traditionally, it's been a better job. That's what I should have said. But right now, with the way that Jeff Landry is doing what he's doing down there, and with literally suing a former coach, I don't know. I agree with you. How you look at that and be like, I want to go coach there, where there's actively in a lawsuit. Like it's a disaster down there right now.
I mean, I would even push back on the traditionally, though. University of Florida is one of the best athletic programs across the board and has been forever. You know, look at our rankings over the past, let's say, 50 years in athletics. We have the same number of national championships, I believe, right? We both have 3.
Think
We
so.
have, we have basketball national championships. They have 1, I think, basketball national championship. We both have baseball national championships. I don't there was a period of time where they were more successful, and it was more recently than Florida. So I think recency bias, you can say LSU. I think about that window of time where the SEC West ran through that LSU Alabama game, and the entire nation tuned into that. That would have been like the late 2000s, early 2010s. And I totally agree with that. I don't know if I agree with historically, but in this moment, even without the familial ties, which I think are strong for Kiffin, it's just such a tumultuous time at LSU. And I agree with you entirely that it's not about the money, but you've got to think that an agent would be like, okay, well, the previous coach was supposed to get $54 million that they're fighting him on getting. So
Mhm.
maybe they've also robbed a children's hospital to pay for some of these things. Like maybe we should give pause here for that. But I don't know. I think you're right that it's between those two schools. When the money aspect, I do think NIL money matters though.
Mhm.
And I have heard trying to figure out the right way to word this. I've heard that for LSU, it's essentially a blank check. And I've heard that for Florida, there is a certain point where they will cap NIL money. I don't think they've gotten to that point where they're saying like, okay, well, they're offering more and we won't come up to that. So that's not what I'm saying at all. But I do think that LSU would be slightly more free with the NIL budget than Florida, unless Florida feels like this is the only way that we land him. So even though we don't want to do this, this is against our best interests or our best logic, we're going to say okay anyway. And I think it will be north of $28 million for NIL if for that budget, which is crazy. That is a massive NIL budget. Okay, so let's say it goes down on Saturday. The only way it goes down for Ole Miss positively, in my opinion, is in the post-game interview. He says he's coming back right there on the field. If he doesn't say it before he leaves that field, I don't think it's Ole Miss. And then I still argue that was really risky optics if you do that. But I don't see a scenario where he walks off that field and then still picks Ole Miss. Do you?
No, not at all. Yeah, I agree with you.
And so then we go into Saturday. So they haven't given us a time, but I'm pretty sure the release from the athletic director said we would know Saturday. So do you I kind of picture them like leaking some information to game day maybe so that it's like a full on discussion, or maybe we go wild and we have Lane sitting at the game day desk and there's hats right there and he gets to pick. Maybe he does it with a headgear. Like how are we hearing this?
I do hope that there's some sort of theatrics to it, because that just feels like the only way you can actually conclude this saga, as opposed to just like sitting there and refreshing just like Mad Sentence's Twitter. Like, I hope that there's some sort of, theater to this. Like, at first I thought he might just go on the McAfee show one day and just be wearing the hat of a new school. But yeah, I do think we'll get some sort of fun way to figure this out.
Before we move on to our next topic, did you see? So Josh Pate had that tweet yesterday where he said, like, I know where Lane Kiffin's going in 2026, and all I can say is wow. And then he backtracked and he said, basically, like, I was being sarcastic. It was a joke. I thought people would know that. I don't know. He is largely overestimating the mental sanity of all three of these fan bases in this moment if he thinks that we were all going to pick up on the sarcasm of that. But in the notes of the show, it says something like people are watching us from Hammond, Louisiana, Ocala, Florida, and he lists all of these places where, rumor has it, some of these private closed-door meetings took place, which I think is interesting. So do you think he really doesn't know when he was being sarcastic, or do you think he put that out there and then somebody, either from one of the schools or Lane's camp or somebody, reached out and was like, that's going to be a hard no?
I think he knows, or I think he has at least his informed prediction based on what information he has made available to him. I do think nobody knows for sure. But I would expect that he has a pretty educated guess. And that tweet has 5 million views now, by the way. That was the ultimate, algorithm tweet for him to send off.
100%. So do you think Lane knows for sure?
I think he probably has an idea now. I think we're at that point where you're Monday of rivalry week. I think he has to know.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to watch. I cannot wait till next Monday where we can find out if Will and I's team have gotten off the roller coaster, or if we're finding out that we're actually on the world's longest, and hopefully we have our barf bags. Let's transition and talk a little bit about some of these upcoming games. This is my favorite week of the year. There are so many cool storylines and matchups and just, crazy things. We've got the Iron Bowl. That is taking place on Saturday. It's at 7:30 Eastern time, 6:30 Central. This game is in Jordan-Hare. That, for some reason, the ghosts of Jordan-Hare tend to get Alabama, when they least expect it. And this is one of my favorite rivalries. I think that just the intensity that this rivalry brings and the chaos, and like I said, anything can happen in this. But for Alabama, this is basically their season boiled down to 60 minutes. If they win, they clinch a spot in the SEC championship game, and they more than likely have locked up their spot in the college football playoff, even though they stumbled against Florida State and against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of feels like Bama fans' worst nightmare, right? You have your whole season on the line, and it's a night game in Jordan-Hare. That is such a mental
All
block
gods
for
are
both
not
those
helping.
fans. Yeah, like that is. I'm getting goosebumps. I don't even care that much, but I mean, this game should be really, really good because Auburn, true freshman quarterback Deuce Knight, he had his debut last week, and it was against Mercer. I get it, but he ran wild. He ran for 160 yards and 4 touchdowns. And if you look at Bama against mobile quarterbacks, Thomas Castellanos, 78 yards and a touchdown. Diego Pavia, 58 yards. Lenora Sellers, 67 yards and a score. Like, mobile quarterbacks have run on that defense. And Deuce Knight, you get a guy who looks like a wide receiver running around and way less tape on him. So I think that Deuce is going to be able to kind of be loose, be free, and be able to run around, which is going to be good because Bama's pass defense is the best in the SEC. So I don't think you'll be able to establish him consistently in the passing game. You'll still get some good plays to Coleman and Singleton. But I think that the big story of this game for Auburn, at least, is going to be, can we just let Deuce Knight go? And can he make a bunch of big chunk plays like he did last week?
I really think this is an opportunity for them to maybe change the narrative a little bit. They haven't beaten Alabama since 2019. They're bowl berth hunting. They're also playing in front of a fan base that is just absolutely clamoring for this announcement of who their head coach is, like the rest of us. And this is a rivalry game that is built on momentum swings and I don't know, miracles, right? And Auburn loves nothing more than playing the role of the spoiler. And I thought this was so interesting. It is the first night Iron Bowl in more than a decade.
Wow.
Which I also think is crazy. And, both of these teams have some tension, some unpredictability, and I don't know, maybe even desperation for very different reasons. Obviously, I am so excited. For me, I think the difference maker for Alabama could be Ty Simpson. He's kind of carried this offense all season and kind of been the spark. How does he match up against Auburn's defense?
I think it's pretty good because Auburn's defense, they're 11th in the SEC in pass defense in yards per game. So that's a good matchup. But they have 11 picks, which is tied for third. So they're kind of a go big or go home pass.
Yeah.
And Bama is still very one-dimensional. They can't run the ball at all. And
Yeah.
we saw Oklahoma, whose secondary has just been okay, be able to commit to they're not going to run the ball, lock down these receivers, pick off Ty Simpson, and they did that. They've
Yeah.
come over 3 times. And Auburn's defense is still very good.
Yeah.
So I think there might be a script where they can do the same thing, but you also look at Ty Simpson's receivers. They've been really good all year. And the one time they looked really weak outside of FSU game was against one of the best defenses in the country in Oklahoma. So I do think they'll still have a decent passing game, but you've seen that script play out just 2 weeks ago where a defense was able to totally commit to the pass, not care about the run, and really cause some problems.
So do you think it's fair to say that Ty Simpson is the single biggest deciding factor in this one?
It is either him or Deuce Knight. I mean, it does come down to the quarterbacks. I would probably agree with you that it is Ty because Auburn is probably not going to score a lot regardless, right? They're going to have to win the game defensively. So for Bama to counter that, you got to have Ty Simpson be comfortable, throw for 300 and a few touchdowns.
Alabama has struggled on the road, and they've lost 3 times to unranked opponents under Kalen DeBoer. How big of a concern is that going into Jordan-Hare at night?
I think it'll be I think DeBoer knows it. Right, I think that that's going to be something that he's thinking about. I think the team will be thinking about it. So one of my biggest concerns for that reason is I think they're going to come out tight because they're going to come out playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win because of all those narratives of going on the road as a favorite. You're in Jordan-Hare. I'm a little worried all those narratives might get to this team and they'll sort of be playing. They'll be playing tight and they won't be playing as well as they can until maybe it's too late.
Do you think this game defines year 2 for DeBoer?
If they lose, it definitely does. Because you've gone from preseason, this team can win it all, to a meet after week 1, this team sucks, to now all of a sudden, they can do it again, and then you drop your last 2 conference games. It would just kind of follow that same script of look, DeBoer's going to win us these games. Why do we keep losing the important ones in conference?
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't we have just beaten FSU week 1? That team sucks, and we'd be in the playoff regardless.
Yeah.
I think it would, which is unfortunate because I think DeBoer is a good coach, and I think this Bama team is really good, but it'll be the second straight time where they just lost that extra game where they can't afford to lose. It's almost inexplicable, and it'll keep them out of the playoff.
Do you think if they win, they legitimately are playoff ready?
I th- I mean, they'll definitely get in, obviously.
Yeah,
I've been worried about how one-dimensional they've been for a few weeks because, look, in the middle of the year, I'm like, okay, maybe they'll figure it out. Now you are what you are.
yeah.
And when you start going against an Ohio State or a Texas Tech or a Texas A&M in Atlanta, maybe one-dimensional is just not going to work. So, I mean, they'll get in, and I'll agree with the fact that they are in. I
Yeah.
don't know what this Bama team can really do because they can't run the ball offensively and they can't really stop it defensively. So I think once you get to a elite team, like you saw with Oklahoma too, like they're just kind of get pushed around, and I'm not sure that they can really make a deep run in the playoff.
So you mentioned that Alabama you think is more likely to play tight. So the converse of that is, is this Auburn team, because they have so little to lose, likely to be freer and looser, and therefore that benefit them?
I do think so, but I mean they'll still come out with a little bit of like okay, like Iron Bowl, here we go, don't make a mistake, because I do think we talk about John Summerall, Auburn having a lot of steam. I think DJ Durkin wants that job too. So if let's say Ole Miss does open up and then Ole Miss calls Summerall, if Durkin's able to beat Alabama, he can just say, "Guys, I'm right here. It's fine. We're good. Let him go." So I do believe that Durkin's going to want it, but that could also lead to some nerves. The players, like they'll know that they're playing Alabama, they're the underdog. Like there's obviously that mental factor of playing tight in this game, really, regardless. But I do think it impacts Bama way more. So Auburn should come out relatively, more loose, more free, more energetic, and ready to go.
So that Durkin answer kind of like parlays into my next question, which is, do you think a win actually impacts Auburn's coaching search and, the perception of this roster?
It would, but I do think that Summerall is still their guy as
Mhm.
until he isn't. Like,
Until
regardless of this win. I do think that it would reboost the confidence in their roster, right? Because I mean, this team is full of blue chip guys. And in the beginning of the year, like I was really excited about them. When you had people talking about how good this roster is, now they're kind of forgetting it because they've only won 5 games. You go beat Alabama, all of a sudden you're looking back at this team and you're like, yeah, those guys are actually really, really good.
yeah.
They just need the right coach. So I do think it'll shift the perception of their team a lot, but it won't make them no longer be interested in Summerall and for Durkin if they win this game, unless Summerall gets interest from somewhere else. I don't think.
Do you trust Alabama in a tight, emotional rivalry game more than you trust Auburn's ability to kind of rise to the moment?
That's an awesome question. I don't know how much I trust Bama because we've seen them fall short of this mark under the board, right, several times, and the kicking woes are real. Like if this comes down to Connor Talty having to make a field goal and Jordan Hare in the fourth quarter, I don't like that one bit. And I do think that with the way that you've seen this rivalry go and how talented Auburn is, like they should be good to get up and give a really good effort. So I think I trust Bama significantly less in this spot just because of all the factors that we talked about.
So then would it be fair to say that this game is closer than the rankings and the records suggest?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the line's at like 5.5 right now. That tells you all you need to know. Like this is going to be a really good game. I just hope that the game in the swamp is at least just go running clock here, anyways, and then we can.
Watching, like, I, I don't even know what kind of football that deserves to be on, like, Nick Jr. or something, in the swamp while this one is going on. That kind of makes me a little sad. Hopefully my game wraps up quickly so I can at least watch in the car on the way home. Okay, so give me your prediction for the Iron Bowl.
I think I like Auburn. I do think I like Auburn. Give me some, just give me some more chaos. Give me Auburn like 24-20. I think they pull it off. I think that they're able to force Ty into a few more mistakes because we saw them do it at home against Oklahoma. This will be a rougher environment in Jordan Hare, obviously. So I'll go Auburn to pull the upset.
All right. I could go either way here, but I'm going to go Alabama 27-24. I think that they finally excised the demons of Jordan Hare, but I'll tell you what, there is not a lot that I love more than an Iron Bowl, and an Iron Bowl at night makes it even sweeter. Okay, we got a lot more rivalry games to talk about on this one. Let's talk about Oklahoma and LSU, which is not a game that I would necessarily label as a huge rivalry, but has a lot of huge implications. Even though the motivations for each team really couldn't be more different. For Oklahoma, this is a win and you're in. Beat LSU at home, finish 10-2, and the Sooners are headed into, at the very least, the SEC title conversation. We got to see how some other pieces play out. And the college football playoff selection, window is now open because they have a strong resume, probably as strong as anybody. They will have 4 ranked wins over college football playoff teams. And then for LSU, it's the same concept as Auburn. You have the opportunity to play spoiler. In October, this team was 6-1. And now a month later, their student section was chanting "Fire Brian Kelly." They got what they wanted. And Frank Wilson's trying to steer this ship into bowl season quietly. I don't think LSU has anything to lose here, but there is nothing that an SEC team loves outside of winning championships than playing spoiler to somebody else's championship dreams. So who do you like in this one? What storyline is the most intriguing to you? Like, this is another one that's going to be fun.
I mean, my biggest thing going into this game, I don't really know how LSU scores points. Like, Oklahoma's defense is really good. You're probably getting Arm Mason Thomas back, and LSU has scored 44 points. Not in their game against Western Kentucky, but in their last 3 games, which includes a game against Arkansas, who probably couldn't stop my grandparents in the spread concept. Like, this offense has been broken all year. And Michael Van Buren, he's shown good flashes, but they're not scoring. They only scored 13 against Western Kentucky at home last week. And I don't know if I see Oklahoma getting to 20 either, because the offense can't really click. They're good for an explosive game, but not much outside of that. Like, the over-under for this game is 38.5, which you only ever see that in snowy NFL games. And now you're getting in the SEC. So it's going to be a defensive battle. I still lean Oklahoma because I've at least seen their offense as it is produce. Like, I know that I can trust Satania to pop a big one. I know that I can trust Xavier Robinson to be established on the ground. So this game might be first to 13 points. But I do think with Oklahoma knowing what they have to do and knowing that you win, you're in, you lose, you're out, I trust their defense a lot to hold LSU to, honestly, like 7 points in this game and have their offense do just enough.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the key matchups in this one. And I agree with you that LSU's got to prove that they can figure out a way to put points up. But I also still look at this roster and know that they are talented. So if there is ever a week for them to put it together, this might be it. So what would if you had to name a key matchup, what would it be?
I think it would just be LSU's receivers against Oklahoma secondary, because when it was Ole Miss at Oklahoma, we saw the Rebels be able to pick apart that passing defense, because without a great pass rush, that Oklahoma secondary is a little suspect. And you talked about it, LSU's receivers, they're really talented. And Michael Van Buren, I do believe, is good enough to, hit open guys in open windows. So if you see LSU's receivers able to create quick separation, because I don't think they'll be able to do a lot downfield with how good Oklahoma's front 7 is. But if you're able to get quick separation on shorter routes, I do think you could see a similar script as the Ole Miss game, where LSU can just kind of pick them apart, right? Not a bunch of explosives, but a bunch of 8 to 12 yard completions, sort of march on the field and produce a few touchdowns.
I think that that's going to be an interesting one to watch. I also am interested in watching Whit Weeks is back. And that I think watching what his impact is going to be is something that I'm going to pay attention to. But do you think that they're similar to Alabama, that Oklahoma may play tight because of this playoff pressure?
They totally could. I think that nobody's really immune to that, especially in this new day and age where everyone's still getting used to, losing 2 games and still having everything to play for. So I do think and also for Brent Venables, like, he was getting fired in the preseason.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big win for him to kind of prove, like, I can do this. We can get to the playoff with this roster. So it's a massive game for him and his staff. So I wouldn't be shocked if they come out a little tight too. Yeah.
Do you think this Oklahoma defense is built to make a postseason run, or are the explosive plays that they have allowed this season kind of a red flag for you?
I think it's good enough, because if you believe that defense wins championships, this is your favorite team ever. Like, they are so defensive. Their offense really has to just trust that the defense holds teams to like 14, which, to the credit, they've been doing. So this defense is plenty good enough. The issue is if you get to the playoff and you play in Ohio State, who will score 21 or 24 on you regardless of how good your defense is, can your offense keep up? So defensively, I have no questions about Oklahoma being, honestly, championship caliber. Offensively, they have a lot to figure out and not a lot of time to do it.
So if this is the low scoring slugfest that you think that it will be, is there a team? I mean, I guess it's got to be Oklahoma that has the like explosive play upside.
I think so. And also, if it's in a close game, I trust Tate Sandell, Oklahoma's kicker, a lot. I
Mhm.
mean, this guy is just crushing 50-yarders, so I trust him a lot to get a big field goal down the stretch. But like you said, yeah, I mean, Satania and Burks, they don't really have the explosive profile of LSU, but they've shown way more explosiveness than LSU has for whatever reason. So I do trust those receivers, even though they're not the caliber of the LSU guys, to bust a seam and get one more explosive than the Tigers do.
All right. Well, tell me who you got in this one. This is again another rivalry week game. It's taking place on Saturday, 2:30 Central Time, so that's 3:30 Eastern for those of us over here. Um, this is it. This is Oklahoma's opportunity to make the playoffs. What you got?
Yeah, if you thought that Missouri Oklahoma was boring, this game might redefine the word for you. I truly do believe this game might be first to like 13 or 14, but I do trust Oklahoma to not slip, finish off their playoff push. So I'll take Oklahoma 14-10. Like this game is going to be really low scoring, maybe even 14-7, maybe even less for LSU. But I like Oklahoma in a defensive battle.
All right, I'm going to go 17-13 Oklahoma. All right, it is time to preview Will and I's game. I can't even believe we're having this game. I feel like maybe we should just be like, you know what? Our state will play football next
Do the
year.
coin toss. That's it.
We didn't. So Florida State takes place on Saturday. Florida is 3-8. Florida State is 5-6. This game is at 4:30 on ESPN2. Should be on the Sunshine Network, but I don't think that exists anymore, so it's not. This game used to have national implications. We love to spoil each other's seasons. Everybody would tune in. But both of these programs are at low points, but they each have kind of massive stakes. Florida is on a 4-game losing streak. They're sitting at 3-8 and coming off. Listen, I sat there in the stands. Absolutely the worst home loss that I have been in probably in my lifetime. The worst one since 1990 on paper to Tennessee. And Florida State has lost 6 of its last 8. And they're still looking for a win on the road, which they haven't gotten this year. Actually, they haven't gotten it in 2 years. But Florida State does have the opportunity to be bowl eligible. And when you are as bad as these teams have been, those 15 extra practices that you get for playing in a bowl game actually do mean something. So even if the game means absolutely nothing, having the opportunity to practice 15 times with what will be your core group of kids the next year is valuable. Florida is a 2.5-point favorite, which is interesting because I guess on paper we're even worse, but their conference is worse, so that's probably why. I think both fan bases are on edge. Florida State was told this week that Mike Norvell is sticking around for 2026. I think that is purely a money decision for them. Florida fans may either be already celebrating or may be on suicide watch, depending on what kind of text messages we get during the day leading up to this one on Saturday. But let's talk about this one, Will. Where are Florida's biggest advantages?
I mean, they are the more talented team. The Gators are but I've said that a lot in a lot of losses this year. So I don't know what kind of Florida team that we get, and I'm gonna harp on this a lot here, even though it might not matter. If we all get a fun text on Saturday morning, I do wonder what that does. I know what it'll do to the crowd. I wonder if the team if it does anything to the team, because then for sure, like we've talked about auditioning, right? Then like this guy's coming next year. I got to put on some good tape for him right now. Like I do think there's potential for Florida to have a lot of juice, but they should have it anyways. You have FSU coming into your stadium. It's disrespectful to the Gators that they even show up every year. You need to go punch them in the face and beat them. So I do hope you get a good spark regardless. But really, I mean, Florida is just the more talented team. They just need to play like it.
Do you think if Lane decides he's coming to Florida, do you think there's a chance he comes to this game in person? His game is over. He's wrapping up his tenure. He's not coaching the playoffs if he's coming to Florida. Ole Miss has made that somewhat clear. Could he be there?
I think he could be. If he walks on the field during the game, I'm going to lose my mind. And also, I don't want to get too conspiracy theory, but do you see that we canceled the volleyball game on Saturday?
I did. I saw that. I find that incredibly interesting, particularly because if you go back and look, Florida has canceled sporting events during COVID, and they've canceled sporting events for a hurricane. But outside of that, Florida does not cancel sporting events. I also find it incredibly odd that the excuse we gave is that they need to get ready for the SEC tournament. Like, when you scheduled this game, you knew when the SEC tournament was. So if that ends up being completely unrelated, I have a complaint to file about us being weenies with the athletic department. But I did see that. I do find it interesting. It is something I have my eye on. Let's talk a little bit about this Florida State team, though. They sputtered against Virginia, and then they have just absolutely fallen apart after that happened. They're 5-6, but trend-wise, I think they're a lot worse than their record shows. They failed to cover in 6 losses. They lost at home to Miami. They were beaten by Pittsburgh and Stanford and NC State. They have no momentum. I think that even though Florida only has 3 wins, it looks a little bit different. They've played 7 ranked teams. They did go 1-6, but they're 1-1 at home against ranked teams. Their defense plays better in the swamp. Generally, they did not last week. Their offense has flashed at times in Gainesville. Again, not last week, but over the course of this season. And, I don't know. Florida dominated in Tallahassee last season. Florida State hasn't forgotten that. I think that is a factor in all of this, but Florida State is desperate. 5-6, win and they go bowling. I don't know. In 2021, didn't Norvell need to win to be bowl eligible, and they lost? I'll have to go back and look that up, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I think we were both 5-6 that year. Yeah.
Yes. So, I don't know. This team is such an enigma to me. How do they beat Alabama? Not just beat Alabama soundly, looked more physical than Alabama week 1. Alabama would run this team off the field at this point. Now, I don't know. I don't know how that happens, but, what would you say is the biggest matchup in this for us to keep our eye on?
I think it's really just the totality of FSU's offense because they've vanished a few times this year. They put up 13 points versus Stanford, 10 versus Clemson, only 11 versus NC State. But the other side of that, they put up 42 versus Wake, 34 versus Virginia Tech, and 36 versus Virginia. But aside from the UVA game, their road offense is where all those bad numbers are, where it's 13, 10, 11, where they can't even get that second touchdown. So I think if, you mentioned Florida State was playing better in Gainesville, if you're able to pair that with FSU's offense really struggling on the road, you could see a great showing from Florida defensively. So we'll see what FSU shows up. They've shown that pattern of we'll be great at home, but on the road we can't really execute. I think if you see that come to fruition once again, Gators are in a good spot.
Yeah, I think Florida's run defense really needs to step up. Obviously, that's not something that they have been good at as of late, but if they can, keep FSU in check, they can win this one. I also think Florida starting fast is important because in rivalry games, your atmosphere matters. And the swamp gets loud when Florida is in it early. And I think that then contributes to those road issues resurfacing. I think it damages confidence and feeds your home team. And so getting out and scoring points fast so that everybody sticks around through the 4th quarter instead of leaving to watch this Iron Bowl is, I don't know, is really important. And there's, like I said, there's a lot at stake in this one. And Vegas, though, tells us that Florida is actually the better team, even though the record doesn't say that. How much confidence do you have in Florida playing at home in this rivalry?
It was more last week when I thought that we'd also get a good effort against Tennessee.
Yeah.
I do still think, you can't just walk into the Florida game and not try, right? Yeah. Like, I think that even though we've talked about how, like, you used the term mercenaries, Allie, like, that is still true. Mm-hmm. You got to get up for FSU on your home field. You're still a Florida Gator. And some of these guys who have been here for a few years know that. Yeah. So I do think that we'll get a decent effort. Yeah, I do think that we'll get a good effort, but I don't know if we still get that good effort if we're down 10-0. Like, I think it could be that quick, where I think maybe Florida will come out strong, 3 and out, FSU scores 3 and out. Do you quit before the first quarter even ends?
What if you're Billy Gonzalez, what's your message to the team after last week at Tennessee? And this is a rivalry. He knows what this means. He knows the importance of this. How do you convey that to your players?
I mean, we heard that Josh Heupel, he showed Tennessee last week a bunch of highlights from the Florida Tennessee rivalry to try and get them going to break
Yeah.
the streak. Just do that same thing, right? Like if these guys who are mercenaries, maybe you're younger guys who don't understand the rivalry, educate them this week. Show them why this matters so much. Show them why it's such a big deal. Because Billy G knows. You were right about that. He's been here for a while. He knows everything that this rivalry means. So he needs to convey that to the rest of the guys and make sure that they want it as bad as he does, as bad as all the fans do. Because as long as Florida doesn't quit in this game, they do have the more talented team. They have a home field advantage. They can win this game if they just go 100% the entire time.
All right, give me your score prediction for it.
Yeah, so I don't love this Florida team. I'm never going to pick against them against FSU. So Florida by 1,000, but I mean 27-21. I think you'll see a decent back and forth. I think each team maybe turns the ball over 4 times. Like it's just going to be one of those games. But I'll go Gators 27-21.
Okay. I'm going to go 24-17 Florida. I'm interested to see who we get back health-wise. There was a lot of names that I did not recognize playing on the field on Saturday. But this game does still mean something. And I am excited to see it on Saturday. Okay, we're going to preview Georgia Tech. But before we do, we have lots of comments over here. So I'm going to go through a couple of them. Someone asked if Feinbaum's coming on. He's on the thumbnail. I'm guessing he's on the thumbnail just because of all the SEC talk that's going on for rivalry week. But no, Feinbaum will not be on the show. Sorry to disappoint. Auburn thinks they won the Super Bowl with that Mercer win, and Auburn is not a top job. I think Auburn is a top half of the SEC job. I think it depends on the year and who else is open. I think Auburn and Ole Miss are a pretty similar job. I would put Florida and LSU a tick ahead. Honest question, what are your thoughts on the need for a conference title game in the playoff era? You want to take that one, Will?
Sure. So I think if you expand to 16 teams, I don't like it, but I've come around to the idea of you need to eliminate conference championship games and give that number 1 and number 2 team in your conference a bye into the playoff, and then have teams seeded 3 through 6 sort of play-in games, right? Where 3 would host 6, 4 would host 5, because then you give more teams a shot within your own conference.
Mm-hmm.
The number 3 seed in the SEC, they're guaranteed a playoff spot now. They wouldn't be guaranteed anything if you did it that way. So I think if right now you probably still need them, but if this goes to 16, I think there is a model where it honestly might be more entertaining, as much as what it is to say right now, to eliminate the 1 and 2 seeds in conferences playing for a championship, give them a bye, and then have play-ins between like seed 3 through seed 6.
So I absolutely hate the idea of getting rid of conference championships, but I also hate the idea of being in a stronger conference and somehow being penalized for not winning your conference championship when there are lesser conferences who get people in by virtue of their conference championship game who don't belong in there. I struggle with what the correct answer is there, but I really struggle with the concept of expanding to 16, because we sit here and we say things like, I mean, they're in the playoffs, but they don't have a chance of winning it. So then why are we thinking of expanding? If we are already saying with 12 teams, there are some teams that get in that we know have zero chance of being crowned, wouldn't that be a proof that you don't need to be any bigger? Like, this is not a participation trophy. I struggle with that aspect of it. But I don't know. Say la vie. Let's see. Oklahoma is full of Texas talent, which is better than Louisiana talent. I do think Texas talent on the whole is at the very least more plentiful than Louisiana talent. But I don't know if you line up a kid from Texas and a kid from Louisiana immediately, Texas is better, but they are definitely more plentiful. The Gators better not lose to the Florida State Cinnamon Rolls. First team to 10 wins. Gators win 10-9. Wow, guys, you are really dialing up an exciting ball game for me on Saturday. I'm super pumped that I'm packing the entire family into the car and spending a whole day driving there. Okay, let's see. Only play the conference championship game if both teams are in a deadlock tie. I mean, and I think then the caveat to that would be, and haven't already played this season, because if they're a deadlock tie and they've already played, like, let's go head to head. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's maybe a solution. All right, let's talk Georgia Tech. Georgia is number 4. They're sitting at 10-1. Georgia Tech is 19, 9-2. Brent Key is a name that has been floated around for several of these jobs that are open or maybe going to be open in the coming week or so. This game is on Friday. It's going to be in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And technically, that is a Georgia Tech home game. But it's a neutral site, right?
So true, but just play it on campuses, please.
I just don't understand. Anything that we do to take games off campus is silly to me. I think that the first 2 rounds of the playoffs being on campus. I mean, I'm for playing as much as humanly possible on our campuses. I think it's good for our college towns. I think it's fun. I think the atmosphere is better. But unfortunately, I don't get a vote. But for the first time in a while, this matchup features 2 ranked teams with legitimate seasons. Georgia, I already mentioned 10-1. They are peaking at just the right time. Kirby wants that national championship, another one. Georgia Tech, explosive offensively. They've experienced their best season in maybe over a decade. And despite all of that information that I just gave you, Georgia is still a double-digit favorite. They're favored by 13, and Vegas has only increased the spread since it opened. So what does that tell you, Will?
It tells me kind of what I came to the conclusion was when I was capping this game. Like, I do think that Georgia Tech is a bit of a fraud. And they were really – I've been cheering for them all year because they're really fun. I love Hans King. I love Brent Key. But their last 3 games defensively, they've given up 48, 34, and 42. And now their best win is beating Clemson at home by a field goal. That means nothing to anybody anymore. Like, I think Georgia Tech, they started off really awesome. They look really impressive. They've been looking less and less impressive, and so has their resume. Like, I don't, just Georgia Tech team, it doesn't seem like they're quite what we thought they were in the beginning of the year. And Georgia, I do think, is playing their best ball right now. They beat Mississippi State by 20. They beat Texas by 25, handled Charlotte. Like, this might just be as simple also as Georgia is clicking and they just become a buzzsaw. And where Kirby has that team really playing well. So I do think that there are just 2 teams trending in different directions. And when the team who's trending up is Georgia in this case, there's already that talent gap. And now you're playing different ways. I think I do like Georgia in this spot a lot.
I think there's a talent gap, but I also think that there's, I don't know if this is the right way to phrase this, but like a balance gap. Georgia can beat you with their ground game. They can beat you quick passing game. They can beat you with explosive plays. And Georgia Tech does have maybe an elite offense, but their defense is just trash. They don't have that balance that Georgia does. Georgia's won 7 straight and is 8-1 of the last 9. Last season, though, is when we saw that wild 44-42 8 overtime thriller where it looked like Brent Key was crying on Kirby Smart's shoulders after the game. But in Kirby Smart fashion, the Dogs still found a way. And I just think, we've talked about on other shows, I've talked about on my other channel, those coaches that are just absolute psychopaths in the best possible way. They're just dogs. They know what the rivalries mean. They carry it forward in everything they do. And Kirby Smart is that man. And I don't picture him letting his team slip in a rivalry game. But let's play devil's advocate here for a minute. If Georgia Tech wins, is it because Hayes King was the wild card?
It has to be. It has to be because even though Haynes King was limping around, his arm was out, detached from his body, he still ran for like 180 and 3 touchdowns. Like whenever Haynes King starts limping, he plays better. It's magical. It's unbelievable. And we saw it last year. The kid is a total warrior. I love watching him play so much. If he's able to take over the game, Tech can beat anybody. I'm just a little worried about them being outclassed this year, even more than they have in the past.
So do you think that Hayes King versus Georgia's linebackers is the matchup of the game? Or is there another matchup that you're looking at?
I think saying Georgia's offense versus Tech's defense is like, I'm not even sure that's a matchup because when we talk about, I think Tech's defense is too good, too bad. So I definitely think that's correct. Is Haynes going to be comfortable? And he'll be limping a lot, but can he is he still like able to take hits? Because there is a limit to the human body of where you can't keep getting hit by CJ Allen. So we'll see how that goes. But I do believe that Haynes King being comfortable and being consistent is Georgia Tech's really only hope in this game.
So, do you believe that Georgia is playing its absolute best football at the perfect time to make a deep playoff run?
I do. I mean, we saw it last year with Ohio State. Like it was even later for them, but they lost that game to Michigan. Then you come back, you play your best ball. You don't even play a close game through all the playoffs. And now for Georgia, it's starting earlier, but I do think you're seeing them. They're getting all their momentum going right now, and they might not even have to play in Atlanta, and they can just go straight to the playoff and just keep demolishing teams. I mean, peaking at the right time. People say it all the time. It matters for that reason. Like you got to be playing your best ball in December if you want to win a championship, and Georgia's definitely doing that.
Um, we talked about Hayes King. We talked about him being the wild card and the matchup being the linebackers. Is he the most dangerous dual threat quarterback Georgia's seen this season?
I need to look at their schedule again, but probably because he's leading the country in total yards per game, which is combining obviously his passing and his running. Haynes King is so dangerous, and you're looking at their schedule. I mean, Ty Simpson less of a dual threat, Joey Aguilar less of a dual threat. Arch Manning is probably the most dual threat guy that they've played this year, and they were able to shut him down. But what Haynes King does,
Lagway had a decent game against them, right?
Yeah, he did a great game, and he's not going to blow you away athletically with how big he is, how fast he is, but he is the toughest kid I think I've ever seen. And just the way that he plays the game, really, it's come from Brent Key and that culture he's had with the way that that entire team plays the game. It's sort of a unique challenge.
Did you see the game day special on him? This was like the beginning of the season, but he's talking about it. They're talking about his toughness and they're asking him about it. And he says his dad, who is his high school football coach, says, well, my dad told me I was soft every day of my life. So it sounds like it was just something that was kind of beat into him. But you're right. He is maybe the toughest player that they will play, if not the most talented dual threat quarterback. We got some comments on the side here about this. Allie, y'all need to have Clark Lee on speed dial just in case Lane chooses LSU over Florida. I don't know that I think Clark Lee is leaving Vanderbilt. I would potentially be interested, but he's made it pretty clear he has planted his flag. It is his alma mater. He has something to prove, and he's doing it pretty well. Okay, we have a point to prove against Georgia Tech. Last year we won, but we didn't beat them. We're ready for Friday. We have better run stoppers this year. We were terrible against the run last year. And then Amando says Chambliss is 10 times better than both Arch and Hayes King, which, I mean, that's interesting too. Maybe he is. Okay, so is Georgia the safest double-digit favorite of rivalry weekend?
I think so. I mean, it feels like, now it's like 12 and a half now. I like Georgia a ton in this spot. I think that they're just going to keep pounding Georgia Tech offensively, whether it be through the ground or on the air. I don't think it matters. I do think that you see Georgia really handle business, so I would have absolutely no problem taking them up to 2 scores, yeah.
All right. Give me your score prediction here.
I do think Georgia rolls. I'm going like 38-17. I think Georgia Tech is just a bit of a pretender. They're not quite there. And I think Georgia, like we talked about, is clicking at the perfect time. So give me Georgia by 21.
Ooh, Georgia by 21. Okay. I don't know that I think rivalry games, things get wonky. I think Georgia wins. I think it's closer than that. I'm going to say that Tech covers the spread. I'm going to go with 38-31. I think we get some points, and maybe we need a little more defense than is going to be played in this game, but we shall see. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the Tennessee Vanderbilt game. This game has more implications than it's probably ever had. Tennessee is 8-3, and Vanderbilt is 9-2. They are sitting at 15. This game is at 3:30 on Saturday in Neyland Stadium, and it is, like I said, one of the more important Tennessee Vanderbilt games ever played. And I don't think that's just hype. And it's more important for Vanderbilt. They enter at 9-2. They are ranked. They are balanced. They are confident. And they are still, on paper, in the hunt for a college football playoff spot. And Tennessee sitting at 8-3, they just dominated the Gators in the Swamp. They don't have a chance at making the playoffs, but they do have a chance to play spoiler in front of 100,000 plus at Neyland. And this rivalry used to be predictable. I don't know that it's even fair to say that it was a rivalry in the past. It was just a game that happened between two teams that happen to reside in the same state. But Vanderbilt is not a punchline. They are an actual threat. What did you think when you saw the line open as Tennessee at a 2.5-point favorite?
I wasn't overly shocked, right? Because I talk about talent profile all the time. Tennessee is the more talented team, and they get them at home. But this game is so fun to me for a lot of reasons. I think Vandy's able to hit 40 because this offense for Vanderbilt is clicking on another level. They scored 31 on Texas, 45 on Auburn, who are both really good defenses, and then 45 again on Kentucky. And Tennessee is 14th in the SEC in yards per game and points per game allowed. Worth noting, they were 16th in that before they played Florida. So, but this Tennessee defense is still really not that good. And the line, I think, is just kind of reflective of Vanderbilt being in a spot where they've never been before. Like they're effectively in a playoff game and they have to go on the road. I think they're just kind of handicapping that into why Tennessee's favored.
Well, here's a little fun fact for you. Vanderbilt is 9-2 against the spread this year. Tennessee is 5-6 against the spread. They have hit the over, both teams, in 7 of 11 games. Okay, so let's say Tennessee loses. Vanderbilt wins this game. So they are then sitting at 10-2 and still alive in this playoff race. What has to happen for Vanderbilt to get in? We talked about when there was potential for 7 teams that Vanderbilt could be on the outside looking in. If they finish 10-2, how confident are you today that they make the playoffs?
I do think it's dependent on if they can get help. I think they probably need Bama to lose to Auburn, right? Because they don't have a head-to-head there, but a third loss for Bama would probably knock them out. I think you don't need Miami to lose to Pitt, but it would help. And I think the Big 12 is probably getting both Texas Tech and BYU in, but if one of them loses and then drops the conference championship game, that helps you out. So I think you really need Bama and Miami to lose. I think having a Big 12 team lose this week would also really would help a good bit. I preseason, if you would ask me, do you think we're at a point where we're debating a 10-2 SEC team needing help to get in? I would have not believed you at all. That's kind of where we're at, really, with how much SEC teams we're already seeing at the top. I do like if Vandy goes 10-2, I'd put them in, but I think they're going to need a bit of help, mainly because they don't have a head-to-head against Alabama.
Yeah, I will be very sad if if a Vanderbilt team is 10-2 and they are left on the outside looking in. We talk about the Cinderella group of 5, teams that make it ever. Like Vanderbilt is so much more deserving over a group of 5 team that would get in, and I would hate that. But they have a big challenge ahead. Neyland Stadium is a different world. And, I understand that Vanderbilt has handled pressure all season long, but that stadium is unlike most places. It's loud, it's volatile, it's emotional, it's hostile. And if Tennessee jumps out early, which is how they played this Florida game, I think that atmosphere is going to become absolutely suffocating. How confident are you that Vanderbilt can come out fast and try to at least mitigate that environment?
I'm pretty confident because I think they have to. That team really isn't built to come back from down multiple possessions, especially not on the road. And I like Vandy's quick strike ability on offense because Pavia downfield to Trey Richardson is awesome. You have Stowers in the middle in a good running game. So I do believe that they have the talent and the ability to start fast, especially against a weaker Tennessee defense. And in terms of importance, like you said, I do believe it's very important because I'm not sure if Vandy can come from behind on the road against a prolific offense. So at least just keeping it within one score early on is incredibly important. And if you're able to take Rocket Top out of the game, that's a massive shift.
Let's talk for a minute about Diego Pavia. He honestly might be the best quarterback in the SEC right now. His stats against Kentucky were absurd. He had 522 total yards, 484 passing yards, 6 touchdowns. He is fearless. He kind of loves being a star. And I think he elevates everyone around him. If he plays up to his ability, is that the difference maker in this one?
Definitely. Definitely. Because we've seen what Pavia has done to really good defenses when he's playing good. What can he do to a bad defense? Like, he can really take over an entire game. I think, assuming he plays good against Tennessee, he's got to be in New York for the Heisman ceremony
Yeah.
because no player is more important to their team than Diego Pavia. We get caught up in this Vanderbilt story. Guys, he's doing this at Vanderbilt, what
Mhm.
Pavia is doing. Like, he needs to go to New York, and people want to not like him because he has the audacity to be confident in himself and confident in his team. Give me a break. Like, this guy, assuming he plays good, deserves to be in the Heisman conversation, and he can take over any game against any team, especially against a weaker defense like Tennessee.
Do you think that Vanderbilt is mentally ready for what is probably the biggest game in program history? I don't actually think that's hyperbole. I don't think that's, recency bias. I think that that's real. Are they ready for that?
I think so. And I'll point to other hard environments that they've played in, but to your point, those hard environments were not playoff games in rivalry situations. But I think that something about Clark Lee and Diego Pavia leading a team is just like psychotic almost to the point where there's no challenge in front of you that's like, whew, okay, here we go. Like, they're just like, okay, like let's do it. Like, I don't believe that they know what fear is. I don't know if they know what nerves and anxiety are. Like, this team is ready to play anybody. So I think that the big stage, like maybe honestly this week, like they're just like right now, they're just like, whew, like this is a massive week. But I think as it goes on, as they keep practicing, and once they get there, they'll be able to kind of flush that and really just be able to play their game.
How much pressure is on Tennessee to avoid being the team that loses to Vanderbilt at the end of the season?
I mean, there's I don't know if it's pressure, but there's definitely just like that sense of like we have our rival, not our biggest rival, our in-state rival in our building. They've been loud all year. We want to shut them up. But at the same time, like Tennessee isn't really playing for anything bigger than this game. So I think that they have nothing to lose, but maybe they have nothing to lose, like because they're not losing out on a playoff spot if they lose this game. They just
Yeah.
get to go out there and with their high flying offense against a Vandy's pass defense, which really isn't that good. I think they can throw it around. They'll play pretty loose. There's just kind of that intensity of like somehow the roles are now reversed. If you're Tennessee, we're like you have to keep Vandy out of the playoff. It's not the other way around. So I don't know if it's pressure as opposed to just like the intensity and knowing what you have the opportunity to do on Saturday.
Do you do you think that this is going to be this high flying, high scoring, high intensity game that we are all predicting, or is there an opportunity that it surprises us and it ends up being more of a slugfest? Like, points are not going to be at a premium for you, right? They're going to be scored in batches.
I've got a really high scoring score prediction here, but there's definitely a path where it is slower if for whatever reason it goes that way because Tennessee, they ran it for like what 280 on Florida this past
Mhm.
week. Like they are willing to and able to run the ball. And Vandy, if they're not throwing the deep shots to Trey Richardson and Eli Stowers, like they run a lot of slow developing run plays where they take the play clock all the way down. Like both teams do have the ability to play in a slower game, but I think you have two bad secondaries. And for Vandy, style points. Like they want to win this game by as much as they can and make a playoff push. And if you're Tennessee, style points in the sense of we want to flex our muscles on Vanderbilt, like show that we're still the power in the state. So I think it could go both ways on paper. I like a high scoring game in the spot though.
I'm looking at some of these score predictions on the side. We got Vandy 45, Vols 42. Michelle wants Vandy in the playoffs. Somebody else says Vols win 38-35 in overtime. Amando says Vanderbilt will win an overtime thriller Saturday night, but will fall short of making the college football playoffs. Vandy needs Bama, Texas, BYU, and Oklahoma to lose. Miami will lose to Pitt on Saturday, from your lips to God's ears. Neyland gets quiet when something bad happens, unlike the Swamp and Jordan Hare. Those fans never shut up. Guilty. Gator fans could be losing by 50 and the Swamp would still be loud. Vols fans will get quiet and nervous as Vanderbilt jumps out in front of the Vols. I do think that is there. We will never lose a crowd environment at the University of Florida. We might be losing the football game, but the SEC will have 5 teams in the playoffs: Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Georgia, Bama, and Oklahoma. Amando says, yes, it'll be a shootout. Both of their secondaries are trash. All right, Will, it is that time where you give us your score prediction.
Yes, I mean, all the comments and what we've been talking about really sum it up for me. I think both defenses are not very good against two offenses who can really do a lot when they're clicking. And Vanderbilt is an underdog, which is almost enough said. I love this team as an underdog. And I just think that neither defenses are that great. I trust Vanderbilt in this spot to get one more stop. So I'm going 42-34 Vandy. I think they get it done. So many points, it's back and forth, so many momentum shifts. I think Vandy gets it done and they submit their playoff case to the committee.
You said 42-34?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to go 45-31 Vanderbilt. I think they put on a show. I am all in on this Vanderbilt team. When I do not have a team with a chance at a not only a playoff, but even a bowl game, I got to join somebody else's bandwagon for the rest of the season. And I think I've picked Vanderbilt. Okay, guys, this was super fun. This is my favorite week of the year. You add in the roller coaster that we are currently on with this coaching search. I think we are going to have a ton to talk about when we come back next week and throughout the week on our respective channels. So we'll tell everybody where they can listen to your work and follow you on social media.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at W Thomas Sports and then Tailgate Talk SEC on YouTube and podcast. I'm doing the best I can with this coaching search. And to now add on to all these previews, this is going to be a really busy week for me. So if you want to come check it out, come hang out.
All right. And you guys know to be subscribed to A Peek Inside SEC Football, head on over to A Peek Inside Gator Football. If you are a Florida Gator fan, give us a follow over there as well. You can argue with me on X at Allie_Peek. You can check out our handles right there in the corner of the screen. We appreciate you guys from tuning in, and we will have lots more content headed your way. Happy best week of the year and happy Thanksgiving, Will.